Hey everyone, it's Justin from Number Crunch Nerds, and today we're going to do how to put the Section 179 deduction for your business use vehicle into TurboTax. We're using the Home and Business Edition. This is the 2022 tax year. We're going to do the 179 deduction for your business use vehicle. Then we'll do bonus depreciation for your business use vehicle. You can use the bookmarks in the description below this video. If you want to skip around, also don't hesitate to put any questions in the comments. And if the question is large enough, I can make a video on that as well. Let's get started with today's video. So we're going to be in the business section right here, business income and expenses. You go in here. I'm going to choose what I want to work on. Okay. Right here, business income and expenses. We're going to go into this section, and you should have a business created already. If you watched my previous video on Section 179, we had the online sales business right here. So we're going to go into that business. If you have more than one, they'll be listed here in a list. We're going to go into the business that we want, and this is where you're going to begin. Now, to find the 179 deduction for your business vehicle, I know a lot of people are having trouble finding this. That's because it is not located in this area right here called business vehicle expense. This is where we're going to come back later and do bonus depreciation. But if you want to do the 179 deduction, you have to go down here. Business assets, assets to be depreciated. We're going to update this section right here. If you've already entered an asset, it will allow you to go right to the asset summary. If not, you'll have to go through several annual elections, which you would click no right here. You could go through the annual elections. If you want to see how to do those, the previous video that I made on Section 179, which there's a link below this video to that, you can go watch over there. We're just going to go right to the asset summary. I have an untitled asset in here just so I could get here quickly. So we're going to start by adding a new asset. Now, you're going to look in here and you're going to say, wait a minute, I don't see anything for vehicles listed right here. And that's right. That is a glitch in TurboTax. You're going to see later as we go through this that you're going to find that it does say vehicles, but right here it doesn't actually say vehicles, and that makes it very confusing and very hard. So what you're going to do is you're going to go all the way down here to intangibles and other property. You're going to click that. We're going to continue, okay? Here it says, how would you categorize this asset? I still don't see anything that says vehicles on it, so I'm going to click Other, Asset Type, Continue. We're going to do two vehicles, one for 179, Section 179, one for bonus, so I'm going to call this Vehicle 1, and we're going to say that cost $60,000. And we're going to say that we purchased it on the first day of 2022 for simplicity. For this vehicle, we're just going to say that we purchased this asset. And for a lot of people that are using a vehicle for their business, chances are the answer down here is going to be no, that you don't use it 100% of the time. You use it partially for business, partially for personal use. If you do use it 100% of the time for business, you would click yes right here, and that makes the computation very simple at 100%. If the answer is no, and you do use the vehicle for personal reasons, you're going to click no right here. And I first use this item part-time for business and part-time for personal. I'm going to click this. You're going to have to know right down here the percentage of time that you use this for business. And the way that the system, the TurboTax system in this section is not going to calculate that for you. In the bonus depreciation section, it will calculate it for you based on mileage, and I will show you that a little bit later in the video. But right here, you're going to have to calculate this outside of the system, and you're just going to have to enter it in here. I'm going to put 80% for this example. I use my vehicle 80% of the time for business, 20% of the time for personal use. And when we go into the bonus depreciation section, you'll see an example of how you could calculate that outside of the system so that you can enter a number right here and calculate the 179 deduction correctly. The date I started using this, for simplicity, we're just going to say it's the first day of the year as well. Continue. Okay, the asset class. Vehicle asset class is 5 years. Continue. The 200% declining balance is appropriate for a 5-year asset. Continue. The recovery period is 5 years. That's correct. Okay, now here we go. This is where you're going to first start to see that this is the correct area for vehicles. Listed property. A vehicle is listed property under the IRS classification. Does this asset qualify as listed property? Let's see what it says in there. Passenger automobiles weighing 6,000 pounds or less. So yeah, right there that's an example of listed property. Other property used for transportation. This is vehicles that don't fall into this category of 6,000 pounds or less. There is a Section 179 deduction for vehicles that are 6,000 pounds or more. 6,000 pounds up to 14,000 pounds. And you probably know that. That's probably why you're in this video, trying to figure out where to enter the Section 179 deduction for your vehicle that you purchased, which is between 6,000 and 14,000 pounds. So after we enter it, you're going to see that it ends up in the right place. I will show you that on the forms. So this is where you enter listed property. So does this asset, this vehicle 1, does this qualify as listed property? Yes. Yes, it does. And here, this is where finally you can find, I will deduct the full value of this item this year, take the Section 179 deduction. Now, when you click this and it says I will deduct the full value, what that really means is I will deduct the full business value. For example, the 80% that we were talking about just a minute ago. It's not going to deduct the full $60,000 that we entered as the cost of that vehicle. It will deduct the 80% of that, or $48,000, which you will see in a moment. So this is where you select to take the 179 deduction. Click Continue. Your estimated expense for this asset is $48,000. And if we look at the details here, you will see Section 179 deduction, $48,000 right here for the vehicle, $60,000. It was the cost, 80% business use. If the date here is not the first day of the year, it will prorate your business use. So this may not be exactly 80%. It'll be something less than 80%. It does take this into account, but for simplicity, and so you can see the math easily in this example, we put the first day of the year as the day this vehicle was acquired. Now let's go over here to Forms. You can go up here to this area right here, Forms View. We're going to go to the 4562, which is the form where depreciation and amortization of assets for your business, including listed property, is all summarized. So this is the Form 4562. If you go down to listed property down here, which is Part 5, all the way down here, property used more than 50% in a qualified business. Here's our vehicle. Here is our business use. Here's our cost. And over here, elected Section 179 cost, $48,000. And ultimately, this $48,000 will be taken onto your Schedule C, which is where your entire business information, income, and expenses, profit and loss for your business. This is where it's going to be summarized, Schedule C. So we'll scroll down here. In this example, I have entered $100,000 of gross income previously, just so that it was in the return already. And you'll see right down here on line 13, depreciation in Section 179 expense, $48,000 that we just calculated. Now, that is how you enter the 179 deduction. And as I said, if we go back to step by step, you're going to have to know the business use. You're going to have to calculate that separately, because the only place to enter it in TurboTax was just a box where you enter a percentage. The system did not calculate it for you. But what I want to show you is that you can use the method that the system calculates for bonus depreciation in the same way. You just have to do it outside of the system. And I'll show you how to do that right now. So we're going back to business income, and expense. We're going to do the same thing with another vehicle, doing bonus depreciation this time. So we're going to choose what we want to work on. We're going to go back into our Schedule C business right here. We're going to, this is our online sales business. We're going to edit that. This time, instead of going to business assets where we went last time, this is where the Section 179 deduction is going to have to be entered for vehicles. We're going to go in here, business vehicle expense. And this is the area that will calculate bonus depreciation for you if you want. And that is something you may consider for 2022, since it's also 100%. And there are far fewer limitations on the business vehicle expense, the bonus depreciation versus Section 179, which I will go over for you in a few minutes. So in this case, we're going to go in here, update this. Do you use a car or truck for your business? Yes, I do. Okay. For this one, we're just going to call this vehicle 2. And let's say we have a vehicle, let's say it's a heavy SUV. Let's say it's a truck or van over 6,000 pounds. Okay, for simplicity, we're going to put in the first day of the year. Next. We're going to say that we own this vehicle. Leasing is okay, but the calculation will be different. So right now we're just doing that you purchased this vehicle. This vehicle was available for personal use. For most people, that's probably true. If you're not using it exclusively for business. Yes, I had another vehicle available. For example, if your spouse had a vehicle in your home as well, probably yes. It doesn't impact your deduction. So those are probably both yes for most people. Did you document the miles you drove for business? You're going to have to do that. You should be documenting the miles. There are apps that can document the miles for you. You can document them by hand. Both are acceptable from the IRS, but you're going to have to track something. And you're going to have documentation of it. So yeah, I tracked my work miles. Did you track your personal miles? Probably not. For most people, the answer will be no. So we're just going to click no there, continue. All right, this is where it's going to calculate it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in total miles driven for all purposes. So let's just say that was 40,000 miles. And this calculation, there are 2 sections here, one for the first half of 2022, one for the second half of 2022. This is relevant for 2 reasons. One, if you're going to take the standard mileage deduction, which you will see in a moment that we're not going to take, and the reason being is because we're going to take the bonus depreciation, which is going to be a larger deduction. But you have to enter this information in here anyway to determine the business use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter, let's say, 20,000 miles for the first half of the year for business, and I'm going to enter 12,000 miles for the second half of the year. And you would enter whatever your mileage is, obviously. I am using 32,000 miles here because I believe, my math is correct, I believe 32,000 miles out of 40 is going to be 80%. So I want it to be the same as the previous example so you can see how ultimately these answers come out to be the same in the most general case. Commuting miles, most people don't track that, so we're just going to leave that 0. Continue. Do you have 0 to 4 vehicles in your business or 5 or more? For most people watching, it's probably going to be 0 to 4. If you have 5 or more, there are other rules, but I would argue that if you have 5 or more vehicles being used in your business, chances are your business is large enough to be having a CPA prepare your returns for your business anyway. So for most people, we're going to go 0 to 4. All right, so it says you got the standard mileage deduction of $19,200, but that's not going to include bonus depreciation because the cost of this vehicle was $60,000 and we're using it 80% for business. So we're going to have to go down here where it says, yes, I'd like to see if my actual expenses give me a bigger deduction. Or you could choose to just stick with the standard mileage deduction. We're going to select yes. I want to see what happens if we look at our actual expenses. Continue. Now here you can enter in all of these expenses for gas, oil, tires, etc. We're going to leave these blank for now just so the math stays clear. But you can certainly enter in information for all of these. And in this case, you would get 80% of whatever these amounts were, you get 80% of that as a deduction because 80% business use. For now, we're just going to leave those blank. Was this vehicle used by someone who owns more than 5% of the business? For most people, that's probably going to be yes, so we're going to stick with that. Was this used as a taxi service or a limo service, or was the vehicle for hire, as opposed to you're just driving around from place to place, like, for example, a real estate agent just using their car to go from point A to point B to point C. For this example, we're just going to say, no, this wasn't used as like a taxi or a limo. For this example, we're going to say that this was a new vehicle just for simplicity. It was not part of a trade-in. Okay, we're going to use the first day of the year as the day that we became the owner of this business. Again, just so you can see how the math works out without having prorations for part of the year, etc. Continue. Now for vehicle 2, I'm just going to say $60,000 again because we're trying to show the difference between bonus depreciation and Section 179. So you could just, for your purposes, you may just obviously, or in most cases, you would probably just have one vehicle. Well, we're doing 2 vehicles just to see what the difference is. So we're going to say that vehicle is $60,000. Continue. Okay, based off the information, this vehicle qualifies for a one-time special depreciation allowance, which is known as bonus depreciation. Would you like to take this? It could affect your state depreciation. So could with Section 179. Both of them could impact your state depreciation. State depreciation either will allow bonus, or it will allow Section 179, or it will make you reverse those and calculate depreciation the way the state wants you to, and that's going to vary state by state. So we're not going to cover that in this this video. So we're going to say, yeah, I want to take the special depreciation allowance. Continue. Okay. You've chosen actual expenses. This method gives you a deduction of $48,000 because $48,000 is 80% of $60,000 cost. So it's the same. It's the same answer whether you take the Section 179 or you take bonus depreciation. And so we're going to check out where this one shows up on the forms, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what the differences are between the two and which one you might consider taking. So I'm going to say, no, I'll stick with the deduction from entering my actual expenses because it's much larger, $48,000 versus the $19,200, which is using the standard mileage deduction. So we'll say no here. We'll click continue. These are some other expenses for vehicles, parking fees, tolls, etc. This section is not available in that area where we entered the Section 179 deduction. So you would have to enter these probably in, like, if you did the 179, you'd have to enter these like just in an other category and keep track of them outside of the software so that you have documentation of them. If you do it through the bonus depreciation section like we just did, you could actually enter them in here and they would show up on the return, probably with a little more detail specifying what they are. Continue. All right, vehicle 2 gets $48,000. Continue. Okay, so now let's go compare them. Let's go back to the forms view, which is up here in the right. We're going to go back to the 4562. We're going to go down to section 5, which is where the listed property is. If you remember, vehicles are listed property. And here they are. They're both listed here. Property used more than 50% in the qualified business. So vehicle 2 was the second one that we did. It was 80% business use, calculated off of the business miles over the total miles. The cost was 60. And the deduction actually is listed right up here on line 25. This one, the special depreciation allowance for qualified listed property. This is for vehicle number 2, the bonus depreciation right here. And vehicle 1, as we saw before, is the section 179. So, you know, you could pick either one, whichever you think is the most appropriate, and you may have a rationale why one is more appropriate than the other. I'm going to give you a few considerations to think about right now, but just before we do that, I want to show you that on Schedule C, right here, if you go down to line 13 again, depreciation and section 179 expense, They were each 48,000. The total is 96. So ultimately, they both end up in the same place on this line, whether you do section 179 or whether you do bonus depreciation. Now, let's talk about a few minor differences between the two which you might consider. One of the considerations was state, and you're going to have to go into your relevant state and figure out basically what you're looking for is, does the state allow section 179? Does it allow bonus depreciation? Does it allow the deduction to be basically the same thing as the federal deduction? And if it does, then there's not going to be any adjustment to make. And if it doesn't, you probably will have to add back this special deduction. It would be like 48,000 for each one. You'd add that back, and then you calculate it. The system would probably calculate it for you. You'd calculate whatever the state allows for depreciation for that year. But some other considerations that you might consider, this is publication 463 from the IRS, and there's information in here about section 179, the section 179 deduction. Again, this is publication 463. You can go look that up on the IRS website. And it'll tell you about limitations, limit on the amount of deduction for section 179. The overall deduction is a pretty good sized dollar amount for most small businesses. It's over $1 million. But there can be some limitations on each item, particularly vehicles. Like, for example, it says right here, limit for sport utility and certain other vehicles. You cannot elect to deduct more than $27,000 of the cost of any heavy sport utility vehicle and certain other vehicles placed in service during the tax year beginning 2022. And this rule applies to, etc. You can read all of this, and it says, wait, this $27,000 limit doesn't apply to any vehicle that meets all of these conditions in the bullet points. So you have to kind of like go through all these and figure out, does my vehicle get limited to $27,000? Because remember, in TurboTax, when we went into, I'm going to go back here. When we went into, let's go here, choose what I want to work on, go to our business, edit, go down to the business assets, go to your asset summary, continue. This is the vehicle one. When we went in here, remember, it was kind of this way where it really didn't ask you enough questions about your business use, and really it didn't ask you enough questions about the vehicle itself. And because it didn't ask you that, you're going to have to know this outside of the system if you want to take the 179. You're going to have to know, is the vehicle that you have, is it a SUV? Is it one of these vehicles that's limited to $27,000? Or is it another kind of vehicle that is not limited to $27,000? The system, when you enter it here, isn't asking you that information. And so if you don't know, if you're not sure which one it is, like if it's subject to this limit or not, then the system's not going to catch that for you. However, it will catch that for you in the bonus depreciation section. The bonus depreciation section is set up a little bit more, it's a little more thorough for the 2022 tax year. As you can recall, we go back in here one more time, go down this time to the business, right here, business vehicle expense, edit this. If you recall, this actually asks you what kind of vehicle it is. Is it a truck or van? Is it a heavy SUV over 6,000 pounds? Is it a heavy truck? Is it a light vehicle under 6,000 pounds? I may have said 60 a second ago. I meant 6,000. So this has a little more information to help the system identify what kind of vehicle it is and make sure that it isn't subject to any limitation. The beauty, though, is that there are fewer limitations on bonus depreciation for 2022. 2022, you can get 100% of your business use, and all of these classifications are less relevant. So you might consider taking bonus depreciation in 2022, even if you originally got to this video, got to this tax return thinking, I need to take that section 179 deduction, you might consider taking I'm going back up to forms here, might consider taking bonus depreciation, because at the end of the day on Schedule C, that $48,000, either way, it's going to all show up in the same place. You're getting the same one. Remember, this was 2 times 48,000 because we had entered 2 different vehicles here. You're getting the same deduction with bonus or with Section 179. But with 179, if your vehicle happens to fall into this category, you may be subject to a limitation that the system does not appear to be set up to capture. It doesn't seem to be able to identify that if you try to take the Section 179 deduction. Personally, I would say that because bonus depreciation for 2022 exists, you might consider taking that. Even if you don't and you take the Section 179 deduction, and later it's determined, the IRS says actually your vehicle doesn't, it falls into this category where there's really a limit, therefore you're going to be adjusted. Like, you don't get the full 48,000. We're going to limit you to 27,000, for example. Well, you could probably, most likely, amend your return and just take bonus instead, because you could get bonus and then you could get the full 48,000. So my personal recommendation is I wouldn't spend too much time worrying about one or the other. Bonus is available for 2022 at 100%. You might consider just taking it because it's very broad and it kind of applies to everything and all of these. I shouldn't say everything, but it applies to all of these vehicles without all these nuances between what kind of vehicle it is. And so also the system appears to be much more set up to handle bonus depreciation in 2022 by asking you more information and also by calculating the percentage use for you based on the miles that we entered in right here. It doesn't require you to calculate that yourself outside of the system the way that the 179 deduction does. So that is how you enter that's how you enter your vehicle information to take the 179 or bonus depreciation in 2022 in TurboTax. If you have questions, if you want clarification on something, throw a comment below this video. Please help the channel out by hitting the like and subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.